Okay. Peace, YouTube. This is FleurBrun coming to you today. It's a little bit of delay, so you may see me react after you're already in. Peace, peace, peace. Hello, hello. Happy full moon and nightmare. Check on it. Check on it. Peace, YouTube. This is FleurBrun. Okay. Let me just lower this, okay? Because I have a little bit of delay. So check on in. Hey, Chon. Hey, hey, hey. The ambassador to the enthusiasts. I've got some wonderful details of what's going on right now. Many of you know we're in a full moon, okay? And the mother hoverboard is here. So check on it. I'll wait until we get to about 500 as normal. Hope everybody's doing well. Hopefully, the fog of mass destruction hasn't taken you out totally. So we'll talk about some of the things that are going along with that again. We're going to talk about the orbs that are still present and the actual, what do you call it? The drones that are byproducts of having the orbs show up, which are basically just, the orbs are more of like, kind of like like viewing what's going on. They're not entity involved. The ship has the entities. So check on in. Hey, hey, hey. Okay, so we'll wait and I hope everybody's well. So is everybody doing okay with the eclipse? The eclipse coming on site? Is your body feeling okay? Are you feeling the effects of the full moon? You know how I feel about the moon, so okay. Checking in. Hey, Delmashe. Hey, on. Peace, peace, peace. Mods on deck. We got On in the house. We got Delmashe. We got Chon in the house. Don't play. So check on in. The orbs and drones, yes. So we're going to talk about those things. And because they always are saying not to say the word orbs, let me be the first one to trigger and gaslight YouTube. Orbs, 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 orbs. I'm probably like messing with their AI. Orbs, 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 orbs. I gave an invite to someone, so I don't know if they're going to check on in with me, but we may have a guest. Maybe. If not, it's impromptu. So, okay. As many of you know, we're going through a major shift. We have some things that are happening. Do you golf? The cult lecture asked if I golf. I do. Miniature golf. Miniature golf. I've accompanied people golfing, so I can't say I'm a really good golfer. But I do like to go in the cart and they have like the little snack thing on the field. So you'll see me there. But no, I'm not a professional golfer. Okay. I can see you after the fact. You're a little delayed. I'm going to start when we get to 500. Hope all's well. We're going to talk about the orbs. We're going to talk about them eating the mermaids, which I think shouldn't, like mermaid sushi, which is very disrespectful and disgusting. We're going to talk about that. We're going to also talk about the mother hovership that is here and the beings that are now showing up. They've been here for a while. They showed up with the orbs when the orbs showed up, but now we literally have beings on deck, y'all. So we're going to talk about some of the propensities, what you're seeing. Some of the cloak beings, they have certain kind of physiological markers that maybe you can recognize. And so I can give you a little bit of those markers so that you can identify the beings when they come in your peripheral or in your site. Okay. So check on in. I've got this new button on my thing. I don't know what it means. Gold. I don't know what that means. They've got these weird things on here. I don't know. I don't know what a goal is, so I'm not going to mess with it. YouTube has taken me out of the YouTube graveyard for now. I think because Trump has threatened free speech, even though you can talk about certain topics still, because there was a requirement before I came on here, not to talk about a specific country and not to talk about what's going on in that country. So go figure with the free speech. Okay, we're under censorship. We're being ran by grays, which they call Molochians, because you know the owl is literally a cloaked gray. And I talked about the lipless beings, and I personally think those lipless beings that I jumped into another dimension, I actually think they're grays. They might be ape beings too, but I really more so think they're grays than they're apes. So check on it. I'm gonna wait a minute. I have to probably go, let's see. You heard about them eating mermaids? Wait until we get to 500. We'll kind of start discussing it. I hope everybody's well. Is everybody doing okay? Hey, Teresa. How's it going in your neck of the woods? Are you still seeing skylights? Teresa was one of the ones who first denoted that she was actually seeing the drones and orbs in her sky from our group. And I want to thank Teresa to give us that intel right away. You know, most people were only talking about New Jersey. And I don't know, well, listen, y'all, if you watch a couple of the old movies like To Serve Men from the Twilight Zone, if you've not seen it, black and white, it'll give you a detail of some of the so-called aliens do. We talk about eating mermaids, but we got to talk about the fact that mermaids aren't the only humanoid type of beings that they consume. They eat human flesh, and that's where a lot of your missing children go. And I always talk to moms about being very mindful of allowing your children to go over certain people's houses, especially if they're heightened in melanation, because organ harvesting is real. And the number one organ that's being exchanged on the black market that's more than gold are the melanated children's organs. And if you don't know, many of you know because I talk about over the year, but some people who are not from the community, brown community, are not necessarily privy. They do kidnap all children of all complexions, but the number one child are people that are targeted for their organs because of the regenerativeness of it are the melanated children. So I always say, moms, abuelas, be mindful of your child going to strangers, be mindful of family members that are desperate enough because groceries in the United Fakes is so high that, someone would be, you never know. People sell out people for less. So be careful with your children. Okay. So, everyone should be careful with their children, but definitely if your children are melanated, I don't care if you're in the high hills or in the hood hills, but you should be mindful more so. Okay. Hold on, y'all. I'm just mute for one moment. Check on in. When we get to 500, I'm going to start. Okay, so we're almost at the marker. Okay, so we're gonna talk about that. No, I was just talking to someone. So check on it. We're almost there. So we're gonna talk about that. So oh no, I know, Sean, I turned it off for 1 minute. Can you hear me now? Can everyone hear me now? Back. Perfect. Okay. So I think we're almost at the 500 mark. We're going to talk about, first, we're going to start off with the mermaids and talking about what's going on. And we're going to kind of talk about the occult rituals, occult ritual behavior that's happening simultaneous with a lot of these phenomenon. We're also going to kind of key in the pole shift and how it interfaces with all this. Okay, so we're almost there. Let's get to 500 so we can quickly talk about it. Okay. So hold on, y'all. Okay. Okay. I think we're at 500. We're almost at 500. All right. Okay, so I'm going to start off. I'm not going to wait into the 500. So peace, everybody. Peace to the east, the west, and north, the south. Let's get into the conversation about what's going on in the discussion of the mermaids. Now, I noticed that there was a huge algorithm going on the consumption of the so-called dark Kabbalists, the dark ones, the Malachians, the deprived ones. They're let me just state this. They're not human. So when we talk about consumption of human flesh or even of mermaids, which are a type of humanoid fish-like beings, we shouldn't be shocked of any type of thing. Can you guys hear me? Okay, we're here. Can you guys hear me okay? Let me know that you can hear me. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, you can? Just making sure. Okay, you can. Okay. Okay, perfect. So, okay, so when we're talking about like perfect, perfect. I have a little bit of a delay on my side, so forgive me if I'm like hesitating to see what your comments are. So, okay, so when we talk about what's going on with the algorithm, especially on TikTok, many of the people on TikTok were talking about mermaids being consumed by dark Kabbalists, by the deletes, by the degraded ones, by the low vibrational lifetime loopers, the inmates from hell consuming mermaids. And I don't want to make light of it because, again, it is a deprived kind of consciousness that would even indulge in that kind of heinousness in procuring a mermaid that, many of you know mermaids do exist. We talk about the fact that there's been plenty of sightings, denotions of the mer beings that have been, existing in our waterways, all waterways. You've heard of the stories, especially in Africa. If you hear a lot of the details in Africa, many of the people, especially from South Africa, and I think around, if I'm not mistaken, um, around hold on, Seychelles and Mauritius. Big up to Seychelles and Mauritius. There's been accounts of people, especially people have those. If you ever been to Seychelles, they have the see-through boats, beautiful canoes that you take. And there's been witnesses who said they've seen fast-moving beings swimming through with big tails, swimming through the waterways on their excursions in Africa. Africa also has a lot of archives of people talking about they used to do exchange from the land beings that were their sea cousins, saying that they used to exchange like, sometimes in the sea they would have certain kind of fishing like arrows, certain kind of nets that they would give, exchange with they denote that they're their cousins. Okay. And big up to the Sea Star years ago. I think many of you, if you go on my, I don't know, Patreon, I don't know how long ago, this is maybe over I don't know how long I've been on Patreon, but I actually have a picture of one of the sea stars that actually was in Canada, and this little fisherman town, whoever it is, can you kind of mark yourself if you're here? Just KK, if you actually put your name, because they were the ones who gave me the picture and actually the denotion that in this little beautiful little fisherman town in Canada, they actually had encapsulated a mermaid, a female, and she was really, really dark skinned with really, really light hair. And like very blonde hair, like how you see like the Polynesian or the children that of darker skin, but they have really bleach hair from the sun lightening it, kind of like that. And she was kind of thickish, but you can tell it's a young mermaid, and it was encapsulated, and it actually had a caption of how they captured this being, saying that it was a mermaid. It looks absolutely real. And you've seen, like, if you go into these weird kind of places, obscure places, you'll sometimes see they have skeletons of what they perceivably are mermaids. And also, big up to my famille in Brazil, over in Manaus, and also in over in, I think it is, in Philinopolis, if I'm not mistaken. There was a denotion of a woman who actually located the femur, like the skeletal of a mermaid that had dried up on the land. Oh, I think it was Brazil. Was it Brasilia or Philinopolis? I'm not sure which one. Just don't quote me on the place, but I know there was one in Manaus and also in a part of Brazil where they saw on the beach the body of a mermaid. And it's really, hopefully I can show it. Maybe I'll post pictures later because I did take it on my phone. I have a picture of it showing the mermaid. And also, you know, many stories talking about mermaids. You know, this is me just talking about the fact that mermaids exist for those who think that this is a mental illness that we're kind of stating that exists, that really these are beings that coexist with us because many of you are not in the waterways, and that's how they've been able to exist without us really people seeing them as often. And also, you know, if you've lived in the Caribbean, big up to my Caribbean family in Haiti. Haiti has a very good connection to the mermaids as well. You hear a lot of the elders in Haiti, especially some of the elder women who have denoted having interface with the mermaids. And also, you know, this, you know, to go a little further, we'll talk about the defamation of mermaids and merbeings by the Christians in Africa who have made a whole, you know, a whole series of exercising what do they call them? The aquatic beings from their parishioners, saying that at night they go to their underwater lairs, which they perceive as evil, and they're going to interface with their families under the sea, and they do a whole exorcism. If you don't know about that, that's a big deal in Africa, especially in Christianity. I learned that years ago from one of the sea stars who shared it with me. I mean, it's a phenomenon that I was shocked at, and now I understood why in parts of Africa, in Benin and other places, a lot of Africans don't go in the water because they're afraid of these so-called aquatic beings, you know, kidnapping them and taking them to the oceans, and they won't be seen again. So I just want to give that like preface first before we talk about the consumption of mermaids. Now, many of you, if you've ever seen some of the movies like with what's her name? Daryl Hannah, I forgot, for Splash. Some of you of a certain age, big up to everybody of a certain age who remembers a lot of our mermaid movies from back in the days, where you saw like details of mermaids coming at a specific moon, you know, being able to come on the surface and being able to shapeshift and gain legs. You know, the Little Mermaid is one of them. I actually know that that is the truth, that at specific times, a mermaid has the ability to shapeshift herself or himself. Hi. Hold on, my dog. You can't hear them, but my dog. Okay. Many of you have heard many tales about it, but mermaids do have the ability to shapeshift certain mermaids. And also, do you remember the color of, what's it called? The Color of Water? Is it The Color of Water? Do you guys remember that movie, The Color of Water? Daryl Hannah. Thank you, Mr. Victorious. Daryl Hannah. I love the mermaid movies, even though they're really over the top, really exaggerative, and probably the least. And we've also talked about the fact that there are beings here, women here, that actually have many women who have some of the phenotype of the mermaids with the thicker thighs, much more blubber based, because to be aquatic, one of the aquatic beings, you usually don't have hair on your body. I denote that a lot of women, especially from like Polynesian islands, probably from Scotland and like women that are, if we're going into like the stories of the mermaids, you'll hear them in all places. So you'll hear of the women in Scotland and Ireland, I think, or like the Netherlands, talk about their connection to the aquatics and having some dreams of being in the waterway. And we also talked about the fact that women, and obviously the Caribbean and Africa, the Polynesian islands, having a connection. So I think just like there's so many variations of us physiologically, there are physiological differences with how these aquatic beings show up. And they don't show up like Little Mermaid, though. A lot of them have what you perceive to be like double nails. Their nails like almost like one of the images that I don't know if I'm going to try to show images later on my YouTube channel where they have nails that are bowed out, like almost like fins, webbed hands, a lot of times the webbed hands. Some of you who get in the water and automatically your hands get really wrinkled. That's a very mermaid trait. If you have thicker thighs, a thicker bottom, with a little loftier of a body, less hair on your body, that's denotably more of an aquatic disposition. Women who have their thyroids, my clip keeps coming out. Someone taking out my clip from my hair. Stop it. Some women who have their gills here. So, many of the mermaids, people who have issues with thyroid, we talked about this years ago. I denoted that the reason why women are having thyroid issues is that they have gills, which are here, and also a lack of iodine. So most people realize that they have thyroid issues, especially if it's hypo. And hypo, my personal opinion, is more connected to a mermaid kind of quality. It's because you're used to getting a lot of iodine from swimming in the ocean, being exposed to a lot of fish, which is most consumed, or seaweed, or even when they tell you to eat a lot of sea moss, you got to ask, kelp, all those things like that. Why do certain people have more of a propensity to have more of a requirement for that, and others have an aversion to it? I personally think that women that have issues with their thyroid, it's because they've been on land too long, and they could resolve it by literally going and living in the ocean and being in the waterways so daily, and it would resolve some. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm a little quackadoodles. I am a trans frog, even though, your new president said I can't be it, even though he's orange. But I'm digressing. When we talk about that, that's all interconnected to your connection to the waterways. And also in Brazil, big up to Brazil, as you know, their obsession, their beauty, especially in Bahia, big up to Bahia, a big bondage, tudo bem, to those in Brazil. They have, especially in Bahia, Philinopolis, on the waterways, they always talk about the connection to Yamiya, however you want to pronounce it, Yamiya, their connection to her, and they have a beautiful interrelationship with her, as she's perceivably to many considered to be a Orisha, but she is very much a reality in talking about Mommy Water, this being that has a sisterhood and actually comes in, she's gifted, and her birthday is celebrated in Brazil at a certain time of year, which is beautiful. They kind of send flowers out and so on. So I want to kind of talk about this, how it's interrelated, because a lot of people think mermaids aren't real, and they're very real. They're as real as we are here. But to say that they aren't a reality when you aren't someone who could be visually, unless you're a water person, unless you're in the oceans a lot, unless you go, because fishermen have always denoted seeing mermaids. I mean, there's so many accounts of fishermen saying they've seen mermaids, or they've heard the screams in the middle of the ocean in the night that are notably sometimes beautiful, but also scathing screams coming from female, or kind of like an entity that they can't pronounce or have no idea what it is. And there are plenty of fishermen who witnessed them. Also, one more thing is when many of the Vikings ships for the Norda that were in the Netherlands and in Denmark, Sweden, in those areas, the reason why they kept a naked woman with her bosoms out on the ships was notably to keep their ship protected, because if they went into the waterways, a lot of times they would be attacked by the mer beings, because of what we're talking about now with them being taken captive and being used as amusement in a lot of places, and a lot of the super elites. When you heard, I don't know if you remember when Sean Combs said, I got mother freaking mermaids in my house, and you think he was joking? A lot of the very wealthy, and remember, in this realm, the wealthiest are the most deprived. Billionaires, the reason why it's called billionaires is because it's be ill. B is a 13, which exasperates and amplifies the ill. So they're usually mentally ill. They've done diabolical things to gain that amount of wealth in this holographic system. You would have had to come from heinous bloodlines, and you would have had to do scathingly deprived and very dark things to even hold that position, as we know who holds home court advantage right now, you would have had to be in alignment with that. So just for that being said, there's always been a joke behind the scenes that there's mermaids that are in some of their houses in the aquariums being held captive. A lot of times they are very sick from being held captive because they have a different pressure that's in the ocean, just like the whales, where the fins of the whales and dolphins kind of bend when they're kept in captivity. It's the same for mermaids. They don't have a certain amount of oxygen. The salt quality is not the same. Having that pressure in the ocean allows for them to thrive better than being kept in a fish tank. Totally different. Okay, so when these dark Kabbalists say that they have fish tanks with mermaids, I believe them. I believe that they capture some of these creatures, beings, and I don't want to say creatures because some of us are related to them. And the fact of the matter, let's get back into the discussion of who is eating these mermaids and why would they think that's appropriate. And again, as I started, preface is that they're not us. These beings are, a lot of them are grays that are shapeshifted into something or some sort of reptile. They aren't human. Most of your governments, most of your officials are, if they're not human, they're hybrids of Cabbage Patch, of they're basically the runners or the agents of the Dark Cabal that are, upholding these socially engineered conditions that we're all seeing and engaging with. But they aren't human, okay? They don't have human capacity, they don't have empathy, and that's why they can sit there and have parties where they make it a delicacy to sit there and have an adorned mermaid and consume her or him without having any sort of mindfulness or any capacity of empathy or shame regarding this type of deprived behavior. But these are the same people that eat babies and, steal children's organs and don't even blink an eye. That's why I say, no one should be shocked. On TikTok, it's a lot of new creators that are kind of new to this world. Some of us have been on a long time, the OGs online. We've known that these beings have the capacity to do the most heinous things because they aren't us. Just like what's his name said, they're not us. They're not us. Okay. That's why they're able to participate in diabolical consumption of everything and anything that you could possibly think, but also, there was a woman, and I'm not sure how true it is, but I don't know that you can make up the taste of mermaid, saying that it tastes like a kind of, like almost like scallops. And I think she said like a type of very fine beef, like a combination of the two with a very floral hint to it. They were talking about the taste of what the mermaid tasted like. And, you wonder why, just like in movies like the Titan and so on, certain places get inundated with like tidal waves and, hurricanes come on land. I also think that when we engage in very disgusting behavior, like in Japan, they used to eat dolphins. And many of you know the dolphins and pilot whales are companions to the mermaids. If you've seen a lot of the documentaries, whether you perceive that to be real or not, but if you've seen it, there's been a migration pattern with many of the mermaids, like some of the dolphins and the seals and the whales. They have a migration pattern and they travel with the pilot whales, sometimes the humpback whales, and also they travel with the dolphins who have a higher mental capacity. And it's one of the reasons that they stopped us being able to give birth with dolphins, because dolphins had the capacity to telepathically talk to the babies and the mother while we were giving birth in the water. And, if you ever had a friend who had the luxury and the ability to give birth around dolphins, the child's development is so much different because of the amount of interface that the dolphins were able to have with the babies, and just that first impact of telepathy that they use with like a sonic kind of sound as well, like that clicking sound and like a very high pitched sound like a whistle under the water. And we've also talked about the fact that they banned women from having that capacity to birth with dolphins. And also I think it's made illegal. Anybody from Australia Where's our Australian family? Big up to our Australian family, who's going through something right now. I'm very disgusted at what the government is doing, what Willy Wonka is doing with Australia. They just had, Sea Star just said they just had did you guys have a typhoon or something? And the electricity's out. And they're calling it a brownout instead of a blackout. Big up to the Sea Star who shared that with me. I wanted to talk to our Australian family because also they have a huge connection to the Dolphins as well. And I think it was years ago that one of our Australian Sea Stars was talking about them banning people having interface with the dolphins. And a lot of times when people were lost at sea, we've had a lot of videos that you've seen. I challenge you to go and watch some of the videos if they're still up of young, and I personally think they may be shapeshifters or children being lost at the sea, and there's something, dolphins that surround them and actually go find boats and alert the boats that there's a person or a baby or a child in the water because you can't see them. And if anyone is, anyone who's a sailor who has their license to be able to drive a boat, you do know a lot of times when you're on choppy water, you can't see. If someone's in the water and it's choppy, the waves usually cover them, so you can't really see them in the distance. But there's been plenty of accounts of the dolphins coming in to find a human boat and alerting them that something is out. And usually that's what I'm saying. You got to listen to the sailormen. You got to listen to the men who are out in the waterways. They usually know, and they can tell you stories for days. They always talk about, the pirates of the sea and the sailors, but we don't listen to them anymore. But they've seen phenomenon that is not being detailed or purposefully being suppressed. So why do I share this? Because when we talk about the consumption of when we talk about the consumption of eating dolphins, which was happening at the time in what do you call it, Japan. Sorry, in Japan. One of the reasons they said that what happened back in the days with Fukushima and everything was saying that because there was a large amount of consumption of dolphin in Japan, that there was karmic debt that came from the water beings, and they made sure to get back at Japan for the disregard and their attacking and eating and consuming their brethren, their family. And if anyone ever watched Avatar, The Water World, absolutely, I think I cried because I felt such a connection to the whales. Remember the avatars also were very connected to the whales, and they called them their sisters. And even when it went into birth, it's like they were giving birth to their nephews and nieces. It's such a beautiful interconnection. The dolphins and the mermaids and the mer beings. And I have to say, when we think of mermaids, a lot of times when you've seen some of the skeletal remains of the mer people, they aren't what you perceivably would consider to be attractive to us. So when they have this artificial imagery of mermaids looking like sexy and, it's really not the case. Being in water makes them look more aquatic. A lot of times they have these hands. Sometimes the beings are not always female, and there's the beings that kind of look like sea urchin creatures that have like scales on their heads, kind of very aquatic, darker skin, green skin. They don't look notably like what you perceivably would see as something like out of Little Mermaid. But I also know that with these dark op programs that the government does, they've been hybriding humanoid women with mermaids, trying to get more of an appeasement look. So I think even with the concept of Little Mermaid could be a hybrid program to make a more appeasing looking mermaid for their own diabolical, perverted, pleasure of having them as pets in the house. So I think a lot of times if you see them, if whatever the person was saying, they saw the mermaid when they were consuming them looking like a female, more attractive. I personally think that those are hybrids created from hybrid programs, dark art programs, where they created certain kind of mixtures with mermaids and humans to make them look a certain way. And also we have to also take in consideration, a lot of times with the mermaids, we don't know, and this is nothing I can actually give proof, but I just think, just logically, is that what would make us think that sometimes there's not some sort of interface? Maybe there is some merging because some people have more of the propensity to have a connection to them, the aquatics. So maybe it could be a mating that does occur when they come on land, maybe the shapeshifters, and maybe a baby is produced from that. So maybe if you get a more appeasing, what you perceive to be a more appeasing type of mermaid, it could be from a mating process that happens from natural means with those who have more of a mer type of can merge and create children from them. I would think that could be plausible, especially if some of us on land have some of the propensities of mer people, and it would probably be plausible that we can mate with them to be able to create what you perceivably would be hybrids. I wouldn't think there would be that hybrid, but maybe something that we would perceive to be hybrids. So let's going up. So let's talk about the consumption of them. There's a consequence for beings that do dark things. And the sad thing about those who are consuming, that are consuming mermaids, there is a consequence to that. Unfortunately, because they're consuming mermaids, some of you who get the backlash from, remember, the mermaids are getting kidnapped, they're getting fished out of the ocean or the water. And then all that, so the mermaids take it as the humans on land. They don't know it, that it's only a segment of non-humanoids that are doing it. They think that it's the fishermen, because the fishermen sometimes catch them. So they think it's all humans sometimes on land that are doing this to them. So as a consequence, I think if many of you saw Aquaman or Aquaman had this, they will bring about certain kind of environmental turbulence that I personally think comes from them thinking that the land beings are doing egregious things to their brother or sister, or being captured in order to get them back into the water. So if you get typhoons, hurricanes, some of these could be, in my opinion, I can't say this for sure, but my opinion, if these beings have been living and coexisting with us, whether you perceive them or not doesn't mean their existence isn't they to have an existence. But they could literally have some kind of control over weather. And many of the things that I think, like they've talked about, rumors had it that Japan, the reason why it got so much of a backlash was because of its consumption of their friends, their family, which are the dolphins. Who's to say that there was more of a consumption of mermaids as well, and they gave Japan a lot of the consequence for doing that, having that kind of disregard of their people. Okay, you kind of see this in the movies, like with the Titan and things like that. They kind of talk about like King Titan coming out, bringing like splashing waves to the humans for being diabolical, what have you. So that being said, when we talk about the consumption, I also think that some of the things that are happening now with places that are being flooded could be a consequence of the dark Kabbalists eating their people, and them getting a consequence to just the people on the land not being able to decipher that it's not everyone, it's those darn bastards. That's why I think some of the sea stars who have a connection to the mermaids, and I've made it a point whenever I go into waterways, I always do my call to them. I always telepathically, because I found out I have a telepathic connection to the dolphins. I always make sure, like if I go into waters, especially in Brazil, that I kind of have that interface to interact with them. But I think some of the sea stars and sun stars, if you have that connection to them, make it a point to go out in the water, and submerge yourself and telepathically, like an image, make an imagery to them, and like push that out into the waterways so that they understand and understand that there's a diabolical segment of not our population, but of these beings that are perpetrating like they're us, but they're doing these dark things and it has nothing to do with us. Now, I think if fishermen are involved, I think if they're involved in capturing them, they should have consequences too. But I don't think that they don't. I think we just don't hear about it. So I kind of wanted to, oh my God. Oh, thank you very much for the donation. Oh my God. Thank you, Ike. That was so generous. Thank you. She's a very special mermaid. Oh, thank you, Ike. That was so sweet. I don't know if I deserve that. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the donation. Wow. Thank you. So That being said, it's very important for us to take our time, and especially our mer family. We have a couple of our sea stars and sun stars that are very connected to the waterways. And right now with the dark cabbalas and the ship that's here, I think it's very beautiful that we go out into the waterways, and mommies who are preggo, all my pregnant mommies, take it upon yourself to take a little bit of a vacation while you still can, and put your feet into the water, put your belly into the water, and allow your baby to be interfacing with her aquatic family as she's in your womb. She will be very much protected. Also, they give a lot of gifts to the babies that have interface with the mermaids and with the mer family. Thank you so much, Ike. Thank you. I feel, thank you so much. Um, and that's a great way to kind of keep the interface. And I know that the government has stopped women from going into the waters, but you can listen. I say, and be careful. Like I said, dolphins in themselves have their own propensities, but I also feel like bringing yourself and immersing yourself in the water, the very thing that they're trying to push everybody away from. If you notice, all the coastlines are also being attacked. And I think that's for a reason too. And there's also a reason why they don't want you having interface, because I think in it itself, why the babies are so much smarter and have such a connection to higher dimensions is because I think when the dolphins have that telepathy, they share the worlds that they coexist with. They share information that goes into the baby and holds in the baby's consciousness. So I think that in itself is important. So I want everyone who has a connection to the water, especially my mer family, all my mer men and my mer women who have the connection to Yamiya, the water's Mami Wata. I want you to go, especially my Caribbean family, my family from the Polynesian Islands, Australia, our family from Scotland and Ireland, especially in Norway, in those areas, go into the waterway and really push out the information that to talk to our family, our aquatic family, and let them know that we're aligned with them, that we side with them, and that we're not participating in any sort of act like that. And there's groups of beings here who are doing it, and to let them know that we wouldn't participate with that. We aren't here to harm them. Okay. So I just give that suggestion to anyone who's here. So for everyone else also, like in Africa, I know in Sierra Leone, in Benin, I know in Benin, we had some sea stars that were in Benin and people didn't touch the waterways. I talked to our family in Africa because you have some kinship with them, because the Christian sector is demonizing the aquatic beings. I actually think you have more of a connection to them. So to me, our African diaspora going all the way from East Africa to West, into Central, I'm asking for you, especially having such a strong connection to them, start to go into the waterways, because now we're into the end cycle where the dark Kabbalists don't have as much control as they used to, because we're going into reset. I think it's more important for y'all to go inside of the waterways wherever you are, especially in Seychelles, Mauritius, over outside of Benin, over in South Africa, what is it? Sierra Leone. Where are the other waterways? A lot of the waterways that it touches, the Indian and the Arabic Sea, go into the waterways and really speak and extend yourself, because as we go through a shifting, a lot of your dreams should pick up them. And also sometimes if the dark Kabbalists are doing dark harm or have one of theirs captive, maybe telepathy wise, you'll be able to pick up signals to be able to detail to them so that they can rescue their kin or know where she is or where he is, so that there's something that can be done. So this just is my take on that. So it'd be great for everyone to try this, especially if you feel interconnected to the mer family. So like I said, I don't think eating mermaids is odd. I think these dastardly beings are deprived. Most of them are human. They consume anything. And I think we shouldn't be shocked by this. We should be vigilant to not be participants in it. And we shouldn't be apathetic to this kind of, just like we wouldn't want our child being harmed, we should be very proactive in making sure that we aren't allowing ourselves to just pass this by, this like this is okay. We should be conscious of it now and push out empathy compassion, and also, to start interfacing with our aquatic family so that we, during the end, when the pole shift will be at its fullest form, we can now start to interface with our family in the waterways and maybe even merge with them later on in incarnation and otherwise. So I just want to put that there. Oh my God, Yvette, thank you so much, Yvette. Thank you. Thank you for the donation. Look forward to your intel, much needed. Thank you, Mama. I appreciate your donations. Thank you, Yvette. Thank you. I appreciate it. So now let's talk about the orbs. Now, normally you hear about people talking about drones and I want to ask any of you, how come there's no talk? Even, do you realize that there's still orbs in the sky? I want to ask everyone, does anyone still see the orbs? Because, the orbs are still here. It's just not being pushed out. And also, YouTube has made it a point to block people's algorithm for talking about the orbs. That's why I kind of gaslit them a little bit by saying orb, 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 orb. Any of you seeing still things in the sky? I've seen orbs. I think for my Zoom family, I was talking about the orbs following me in the car when I was driving in the mountain way, and it literally was following us. So I want to see if anyone else is seeing orbs. Are you guys still? They're still here. And it's crazy to me that no one is talking about them. Why are they still blocking it? And I've told you, I personally think or kind of know that the orbs are like scouts. They're not necessarily being manned. They're kind of being used as eyes to see what's going on, kind of seeing that. And if you notice, whenever the orbs showed up, the drones were going to protect their nuclear sites. So it's interesting to me that your Willy Wonka would go into as soon as the orbs would show up, they go and show these so-called drones, and the drones were huge. The drones were like the size of cars or buses. That's how big they were. And whatever drones they had out there, those are not the ordinary drones that we normally see. When drones usually have a life of maybe 5 hours, these drones would stay up all night. And that's not notably anything that we knew or know they have technology having, especially that big and hovering. And it seems that they were concerned that those happy birthday, whose birthday is it? Happy birthday to someone in there. I didn't know whose birthday it is. Happy birthday, blissful birthday. You are a Pisces, right? Is it Pisces? Wait, is it still Pisces? No, it's not Pisces season. Isn't it now? What season are we going into? We didn't start Aries. Have we started Aries yet? Y'all? Have we started? No, we're still in. Have we started Aries? Are we in Aries season yet? Let me see. Happy birthday to whoever's birthday it is. Blissful birthday. I hope you're enjoying. Still watching us. Okay. Let me see whose birthday it is. It's Aries season already. It's Aries season, y'all. Oh, it's still Pisces season. Okay. Thank you, 7-11. It's still Pisces season. Okay. Just making sure. Thank you, Choctaw. Okay. So big up to our Pisces. Big up to happy birthday to our Pisces in the house. Happy birthday. Blissful birthday. I hope you're enjoying it. You actually have a birthday on a very powerful eclipse, which will probably amplify certain things, certain gifts to you. So I hope you're enjoying it right now. Oh, it's Pisces. Okay. I didn't think we were in Aries season because when they start Aries, and we're going to go into April 4th. Can someone remind me about the April 4th? Because I don't want to talk about it now, but we'll talk about what is perceivably supposed to happen about April 4th, okay? So the luck of the Irish, because I know St. Patty's Day, what is it, the 17th? No, I know that because the Irish, it's really big in certain places in the United States. Many people celebrate St. Patty's Day because it's such a beautiful festive day. It's one of the holidays I always like. I was liking that the holiday, like St. Patty's Day, is such a big. Oh, thank you, Carrie Trek. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the donation. Thank you. St. Patty's Day is like the luck of the Irish. You talk about the leprechauns. Remember, it's a very elemental based country. Ireland has magical, like Scotland, and there's so many things connected to the rainbow, the pot of gold, the little beings there, which we know are like the pygmies. So many beautiful stories. And I always think, I always like to say, I have such a beautiful connection to our family in Ireland. So big up to our family in Ireland. They just stand up for righteousness, and they are so unapologetic about it. I think, out of Europe, I always see our Irish family as like the stark, like this to say, listen, you better be righteous because we're going to talk about it. We're going to do something about it. We're not going to allow you to be non-righteous. So I love our family in Ireland, but in the United States, they celebrate St. Patty's Day. It's a big deal. I think a lot of places, do you celebrate St. Patty's Day? I don't know if everywhere does. I know the United States has a unique connection because of the slaves that they had initially with the Irish when they first came. So I know many of you heard about the slave trade, but no one talks about the fact that the actual initial, what you perceive as slaves, were the Irish and how heinously they were treated. And, you know, I think there's a lack of acknowledgement because time has gone by. We talk about every group, you know, melanated people especially, but Irish also were included in that. And the reason why they were put in the coal mines and allowed to, you know, work to death, literally. So I always bring that up because sometimes I don't know if everyone acknowledges. I do. I'm from New York, so we have a huge Irish community. So, you know, I actually always, you know, I have an affinity for our Irish family just because of, you know, it's like I always have a lot of compassion. I see how beautiful they are on Ireland standing up for righteousness. Anyway, so what was I talking about? I kind of, and I have my little thing, look at y'all, I have the look at Irish one, all my things fell off though, see? My little Irish ring that I got in Canada, in Vancouver. Big up to Vancouver when I was over there, okay? So what am I talking about again? Okay, darn. I was talking about the orbs, okay? So many of you don't realize the orbs are still on site. And there's no discussion about the fact that the orbs will show up and as soon as the orb showed up, oh my God, thank you, Yvette. Thank you, Yvette, again. Oh, thank you, Yvette. I definitely need to hear about April 4th. That's your birthday? Born in the boogie down the Bronx, now in GA. You know, it's a natural progression for everyone to go to Atlanta. Big up to Georgia in the house on the 33rd. Big up to our family from the Bronx, boogie down. And her birthday is April 4th. So when we're talking about April 4th, I'll bring it up right now before I forget. April 4th is supposed to be this huge energetic event that happens. Now, many of you have heard me talk about the ship that is here. The ship is no longer in movement. It is actually here. That is why you're getting all of this phenomenon happening with the lights flickering outside the stores. And, you know, we talked about this on Zoom, so I'll kind of bring this up again. Thank you, Carrie. You guys are such sweet. Thank you for the donations. You know, YouTube took me out of jail. I'm really appreciated. Thank you so much. Thank you. I so appreciate it. You are an amazing teacher. I've been watching you since before the pandemic, and your guidance was and is God sent. Thank you, my love. Thank you so much, Carrie Track. I appreciate it. So when we're talking about April 4th, there's a huge event that's supposed to happen energetically, where there's supposed to be some sort of either it's going to be an electrical event where we're going to see a lot of things, either it could be showing phenomenon like again the auroras showing up again in odd and new places, or literally like a blackout of some sort. It's supposed to be such a strong event that the grid might be affected, or there might be a shifting of, you know, again, because when this happens on April 4th, supposedly, the government is going to try to hide it and cloak it with something. So the phenomenon is supposed to be an event that's natural because of the shifting we're going through. So it's supposed to be something energetic that affects our grid, but we may see auroras, like I said, around different places in the globe that are not notably, you know, aurora-like places. But we could see something happen with the government saying something, because remember, that's going into Aries season when they promote some sort of warlike thing, whether it's a war on our health. Because remember, the Plandemic is something that is going to come around again, and it's going to be in real time, or it could be something governmental or false flag that they initiate so that we don't notice this phenomenon that's supposed to show up April 4th. So for our sea star, Yvette, pay attention to that day. It's your birthday. Celebrate it. It's celebrate, because whatever energy you bring, you're going to have that regardless. If the lights go out, you have the sparklers. So have your sparklers out. So if you know that we might have something energetic, play with it. We want the grid to go down. I don't know why people have a problem with the grid, but I actually think having the grid down, your mind will work better. You won't have all this electromagnetic frenzy in your mind that messes all the Wi-Fi, that causes people to have all kinds of brain freeze, health issues. You want that. So for our Sea Star event, have some sparklers, get the sparklers on site. Okay. We celebrate when there's a dark out. I mean, this is the bomb if it's a blackout. I don't think they want a blackout, because AI is a system that they want to work with. So when they say that they're scared of the blackout, they're not. They want to project that on us. They're scared of it because they won't have control over you. Thank you, Star Love. Thank you so much for the donation. Thank you, my love. Thank you. With the little Irish. Look at the Irish. I like that. But so on that day, so celebrate. So get some sparklers, get some, those cracky lights, those things that you like. Remember, have the purple lights, because we don't know what kind of beings are going to be walking around too. Because, if the electricity goes down, they're going to probably set out their, their hybrids that they've been creating, these, this type of mixed beings that are in the national park. So I would say just be a little cautious with that as well. So have your little breaker lights, have the party favors out, have the alien glowing ears on, have a ball, Sea Star. I hope you have a wonderful celebration on April 4th, and let it not tone you down. It's supposed to be energetic. And if the Dark Kabbalists do something crazy, you don't have to participate. We are non-participating of their diabolicalness. They've been doing it for years. So we come on here, we discuss, we warn each other. We're not participating in the Hunger Games slash what is it, The Walking Dead slash what is it, the Handmaid's Tale, because they got a lot of things running in this hologram. So enjoy your birthday, enjoy everything. We'll be discussing things. So April 4th is supposed to be an energetic day where something electronic happens, like energetically, magnetically. So, but I think the Dark Kabbalists might, throw a false flag on us just for good measure. Okay, so let's go back to the orbs. Hey, Oracle from Canada. Is it warmed up in Canada? Did it warm up a little bit, Oracle? I know it was chilly in Canada for a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about the orbs. So when the orbs showed up, Willy Wonka and his League of Doom made a whole new term, right? Many of us who know the term UFOs, right? But they made a whole new term because they want to divert you from certain terminology so that you think it's them. And what they did is, when the orbs showed up first, and they were coming from the water, y'all, they were coming from underneath the water, coming and erecting themselves and showing up. So what came first? The orbs or the drones? The orbs came first, and in response, Willy Wonka, and I know y'all like the Orange Man. I know you give him preface, but how come he told you he was going to tell you what they were, and he's never spoken anything about it? He's never even mentioned it. How come he's not talking about the whole thing with JFK? He said he was going to disclose all these things, but how come your Orange Man is not disclosing anything? Why is he leaving everything kind of ominous like before? Didn't he say he was going to expose that? Anyway. So the orbs showed up from the waterways. They were coming, a lot of the fishermen, some of the cruise ships were seeing them, and then they showed up in the sky, and guess what came? Elon Muskie. Actually, I don't think that Elon Musk made him, because he's not that smart. That's a really bad model. A Bioborg. Don't you think Elon Musk is a bad Bioborg? Because he made cars. Big up to Daryl. He made cars made up of that look like tissue boxes. Big up to Daryl, said they look like tissue boxes. And they don't even stand up. They're supposed to be turbo trucks. They're supposed to be space age. They look like a prototype that someone just didn't finish. And they're really cheaply made. Like, my truck could run over one of those in 2.5 seconds. How you gonna make something like that and then promote it like it's something special? I don't think he's that smart. I don't think he made those drones. They saying it's part of him. I think that he puts his name on stuff, just like Billy Gates. And again, Bill Gates. Think of the name, y'all. Bill B. That's for amplifier. Ill Gates, a gate of sickness. And look what he's perpetuating all over the world: sickness. Right? They tell you who they are. And this one, Elon Muskie, with his cutie pie from, you saw his son? His son's name is X, y'all. Do you see how cute he is and diabolical at the same time? He is a cutie pie, but he is naughty. He was telling, listen, and we don't even think that was real, y'all. We actually think that image of the little boy in the White House, we think that's fake. Thank you, Tanya. I like your name, Lipscomb. Thank you, Tanya. All. Thank you for my donation. We actually think his little boy he's feisty, but we don't think that Trump was actually in office. We think that that was some sort of like cut and paste. Because it seemed like he was talking about something as if he was talking about his father, but it didn't seem like he was talking to Trump. If some of you have opinions about that, we would love to, because we were discussing that in Zoom. It just didn't fit. You know what I mean? It's almost like he's talking about his dad, saying you're not the president. Like his dad was talking, but but Trump wasn't there. It was like with disconnect there. So let's see what you guys think about that. He was naughty. He was so naughty and cute at the same time. He had his little cute little outfit on. He was dressed better than his daddy. Anyway, let me go back to the orbs. I have all kinds of sidebarring. So we have the orbs show up, then you have these drones show up. The drones were response to the orbs because they knew something was coming. The orbs literally were some sort of scouts. They were looking around. They weren't aggressive. They weren't doing anything until attack. Now, if some of you remember the images, and I want you to start looking up at the sky. Please don't stop looking at the sky, y'all. There's so much going on up there. That's why all these geoengineered storms, they're covering these dust storms, these freaking fogs with nanobites all in them. This is all could be a byproduct of the shift. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but literally could be cloaking so that you don't see what's in the sky anymore. Because remember when you saw the orbs and the drones show up, the drones were going to protect what? The nuclear sites. Because if anybody remember, the first thing people said is the drones were going, and they were going to go to the sites of the nuclear weapons because they thought that the drones were going to deactivate their weapons of mass destruction. So it seems to me that what the drones were doing was reacting and pre-reacting to something that they thought was going to take down their weapons of mass destruction. Okay, so the drones are still there. And when the drones were being attacked, when the orbs were being attacked, if guys, you got to remember, don't fall asleep on this because they don't want you to talk about it and they don't want you to remember what was just 2.5 seconds ago. Do you remember when the orbs were there and they were just very passive? They're just scouting, they're looking, they're receiving information, and the drones were the ones shooting at them. And do you remember what happened when they would shoot at the orbs? Nothing would happen, but the orbs would shoot back and deactivate, almost like they had an EMP laser hit, and deactivate the drones immediately. Do you remember the drone that was in over in Jersey that they found on the ground? Do you remember that? The one that crashed that everyone videotaped? It's amazing to me that those imagery and that conversation is not even resurrected. It's almost like everyone forgot about it. Don't fall asleep. This is right before we get to the Emerald City, y'all. Remember like when Dorothy and the lion and the scarecrow, they went into the poppy field and they fell asleep. This is what happens when we get to the finale. They make you fall asleep so you stop remembering things. They don't want you to remember. So if you're falling asleep, I want you each to write these things down, not on your phone, not on your computer. I want you to write it down on a little book that you have personalized, a little login book. Get it really nice so that you remember it, hide it somewhere, because if you notice, all of these things are being forgotten. Okay, so it was crashed. We saw the images. Many of you saw the images. If you resurrect your mind, remember they were shot down. It was the drones you were seeing. You didn't see the orbs crash, but you should see the orbs react to the attack of the drones, because the drones were trying to attack the orbs and they couldn't. And the drone would throw some sort of beam on it and deactivate it and would literally fall down to the ground. Okay, so some of these things that we're also seeing with the fires in North Carolina, we had a fire in Long Island, New York, we had fires over in California. Some of these could be a form of space wars that you can't see visually, that could be a result of having fires on ground. Okay. I think some of us are forgetting that there was a lot of space war activity when we first saw the orbs and the drones fighting. But wouldn't you notice that maybe they're trying to burn creatures? Because now the ship is here. Now we're going to the ship. We're going to talk about the ships that have literally shown up, the ship, Mothership, I'm sorry, the Mother Hover ship that has shown up on the entirety of the planet. And I want to give a shout out to everyone who's been emailing me, the Zombies, everybody who's been taking down notes and has been comparing notes. Also in Europe, we have our family in UK, we have our family in Ireland and Scotland, we have our family over in Portugal, we have our family in France, getting details from them. We got our family in Greenland, we got our family over in Africa, over on the west and East Coast. We got our family over in the Caribbean who's always giving details. We got our family all in the United States. So and also in Asia, we got our family in Vietnam, we got family over in Japan. So we're getting a lot of details, and also in China. So we're getting a lot of details of same like weather patterns that are denoted because we have a huge Mother Hover ship that is here. Remember I told you it was coming? It is here, y'all. And not only is it here, there are beings that have now shown up on site. And I personally think what we could perceive are fires could be that they're trying to burn out areas to flush out these beings that have now landed on site. So we're going to talk about that, how that's interrelated to the 8 beings that were sighted, a month ago that we were talking about that were cloaking themselves. That's why they told you South Carolina, there was a whole bunch of apes that left South Carolina. That was cap. They were trying to get you to perceive that if you saw something ape-like, that it would be from that so-called escaped apes. How come they haven't followed up, y'all? Has anyone heard of the follow-up of the apes that were escaped from South Carolina? Let me know, because we have a little bit of a delay. I want to know if anybody has heard anything as them resolving it or a follow-up. Has anyone heard of what has happened to those wild apes that they said were going rogue? There was a whole bunch of them, right? They said it was a whole bunch of apes that escaped that island, that testing island in South Carolina that's off the coast. How come they've not said anything? Have you heard anything about the apes after that? We have details of things, but let me see if you heard anything. I have a little bit of delay, so I'm just listening. I'm just looking at your comments. Warren says, nope, here in North Carolina. Oh, yes, they said they were caught. Andrea said she heard they were caught. They claim all but one was caught. Okay, Rock. They claimed, okay, so they did claim him. They claimed they caught all but 2. I'm in from South Carolina. Okay, thank you for those, because you guys are there, so you would know more. Never heard of the escaped apes, Claire? Claire said she never heard of them. Nothing in Georgia. They claim to have recaptured them. Okay. So at the time, they were talking about the apes being free. Did you guys see some of the videos of people saying there were things in their trees really high up, like shaking the trees, breaking off limbs? When we did a deep dive, big up to the Zombies, we did a deep dive and we actually took images, like we froze images. There were actually ape beings, like huge giant apes that were in the sky, like as tall as the sky. And I've talked about the interconnection between the so-called Yeti and the Bigfoot. They are all kin. They are all monkey beings. It's interesting to me that when they're talking about the Bigfoot, they never say it's ape-like. They never say it's monkey-like, even though the visual look of them is very ape. And when they did the DNA of the fur, supposedly from a couple of the Bigfoot, people saying that they found like little hairs or fibers and they went to go look at it under a microscope, they said that it was the same as an ape. So I personally think that the beings that we saw coming off of the ship, remember I said I had these connections to the ape, big up to Rod Hayes, because, you know, he calls himself the sick ape. So, you know, I was talking about the time when I was having all this telepathic messages and they were coming from, you know, gorillas. And I was like, I never had, and remember last year, 2024, if many of you remember the whole concept of the apes, like we had Godzilla versus King Kong again. You had the Ape Man, you had Planet of the Ape. How come all these ape shows were showing up? Whenever they do that, it's to totally take your attention and make your mind think that if you saw anything or you saw anything, you would automatically think it's connected to your sci-fi show. Sci-fi was created as a psyop, so that if perhaps you ever saw something, you would think you were having your imagination to take over, and that it would be connected. Wait, hold on, y'all. Too much truth. Okay. Sorry about that. So if you remember, all these and I had this telecommunication, many of you were on here before, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, why am I having these images of, like, remember I told you the Spanish woman, she was Mexican, she was like mist, and she would demist herself, and the hat that you saw Beyonce wear in her video Lemonade, and also the hat that you saw Melania wear during the inauguration, that was the same hat this beautiful demisted Mexican was wearing when she demisted, and she was with me and the gorilla. And it's the first time I ever saw that I had some connection to the gorilla beings. You know, I have an affinity to the Wakanda gorilla man. You already know I have a crush, and I'm hoping he takes me to his ape world. Hopefully, if he's off the ship, you know what I mean? But that's personal. Okay, so we were talking about that, and when we did the defreeze of this gentleman, who I think was a gentleman on his porch, he was saying that this thing was in the sky. He couldn't see it. But when the zombies, we sat there and we froze the image, we saw it was an ape being that was super, super tall. And remember, when many people talk about the Sasquatch and the Bigfoot or the Yeti, they always talked about them being scouts. Do you remember, like, if you ever talk to people that were big into like the Bigfoot, but what we heard is that they were like refugees, but I've heard of them being scouts. And if in fact we know now that they're scouts, they were meant to stay here for a certain period of time. Hold on now, for a loud second. Okay, we've heard that most of them, with the Sasquatch. My dogs, you can't hear them, but my dogs are. Okay. When we talked about, when you've heard people speak about them, we've talked about the fact that my dogs are going crazy. Hold on. You can't hear them, but hold on. Bye. Go over there. Bye. Go outside. Bye. Bye. Hold on. Bye. Go outside. Thank you. Okay. My dogs are out. Okay. We talked about the fact that the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot were only mostly males. There were no females. How do we know this? You've heard of a lot of the people a lot of the channels that talk about the Bigfoot. They talk about the fact that the Bigfoot had mated with horses, and how they know they were mating with their horses is that they would always have the tail of the horse braided, like when they were mating with them. I don't know, it's some sort of weird sexual kind of thing, but they were mating with the horses as an option because they did not have females. Usually when you only see males of a species on site, it's usually because they're being left there as soldiers or watchers, right? So personally, who let the dogs out? We've heard about this as them being scouts and being set here for a certain period of time, as almost watchers or scouts. And even when you hear of stories of the Bigfoot, you hear wonderful stories of them being like masters of like a lot of the so-called like the arts of the Chinese or of the mystics, that being able to like cloak themselves or shapeshift or to be almost like chameleon, like where they're able to shapeshift and look like the tree. You know, they have this amazing ability, and I think that would be perfect for scouts or soldiers to be set somewhere where they're meant to look or watch quietly. That's why they don't really interface with anyone. That's why they're not so overt, because maybe they were set here. And then when you hear of if you hear of stories of these Yeti or Bigfoot, you always hear of them doing like staying in obscure places where they're not notably interfacing with anyone. Like they're just staying in like national parks. And don't you think it's interesting that Trump just put some weird kind of thing on locking down the national parks? Do you think that's not by chance? Because if the scouts, okay, let's just say we're correct. I'm correct in my theory, my hypothesis that these are apes, and the new big apes are showing up because I had some interface with these apes, and not just apes, they were gorillas. Let's say that the Sasquatch or the Bigfoot are a type of primate, like an ape, like a type of big ape, and they're scouts. Wouldn't it make sense that the ships are here, those are the places that those ships may go over and hover to be able to pick up their scouts or to land and get the details of what's going on? And that's why Trump is locking down these national parks. Now, I want many of you to see, give me some information, like share your information if you know anything differently. I'm not big into the Sasquatch and Bigfoot community, but because I've been part of the UFO community for so long, we kind of intermingle sometimes with information and interface. Now, even when you watch Star Wars, remember Star Wars? What about the Wookiee? The Wookiee looks like what? A Bigfoot. The Wookiee looks like a kind of like what is it? What does red eggs? Looks like an ape. When you look at Star Wars, the Wookiee is very much connected to what I perceivably think is a Bigfoot. Okay, looks very similar, very tall, or he makes some weird sound, which is interesting. But the Wookiee, looks almost like what is it, like a orangutan. You know how the orangutan looks like reddish, long arms, kind of like that. Looks very similar to that. Chewbacca, thank you, Chewbacca K. And you guys can chime in on this. Take a look at Chewbacca, look at the Bigfoot, look at the denotion of the Bigfoot. Some people did a DNA test. You can actually look this up, y'all. I'm not making this up. Some people did a DNA test of the hair they found behind the so-called Bigfoot, and had the same hair of a monkey. So I personally think, just if I'm putting the dots together, that it's a type of ape. And now when I notice that all of a sudden the ape theme was coming up last year, heavy, and they're making sure they make movies so that you don't really see it. So if you see something, you automatically, oh, I just saw King Kong, it's in my mind. Oh, I just saw the ape man, it's not real. So you would automatically, that's why sci-fi was created. It was to make sure that anything that you see that is real, you automatically, by your design and you being exposed to so-called movies, would automatically think it's your imagination based on what you saw in the movies. Well, meanwhile, they're preempting you with the movie so that when you see the real deal, you won't think it's real. Okay? So Sasquatch is an ape being. So I personally think when Trump is locking down these national parks, it's because he's seeing that he's locking down. He doesn't want people to go around those areas to maybe interface with these ape beings, or maybe lock them or enclose them. And also with the Star Wars thing going on, with the space kind of fighting going on, with these drones attacking the orbs, there's a lot of beings landing right now, y'all. So we're going to go into that the ships are above, the ship is above, it's a mother hover ship. And how we know that the ship is here is that we got a lot of factors that are very singular in the occurrences. What do I mean is that globally, the ship is literally hovering over the entirety of this whole globe. And how do we know is because you could be living over in Australia and have a windstorm, and someone in Texas is having the same windstorm at the same time on a different plane, a different continent. Then you have someone in Africa having the same weather that is happening somewhere in China at the same time. It's because the ship above causes certain physiological phenomenon, kind of like aerial phenomenon, ionosphere phenomenon, weather differentials because something is so close to the atmosphere, it's changing things. So you've heard me over the years talk about whenever there's a ship, what happens, but many people, and you can look this up online, y'all, many people are denoting that they're seeing flashing lights. Now, big up to Delmache, who was in the group. I was talking about these flashing lights being denoted to the ship being here. So if you look online, you can see, I'm sure you can look on YouTube, maybe you'll see it on TikTok, maybe you'll see it on X. There's a whole bunch of people saying they're going outside of stores and seeing all the lights flashing. Now, if you watch all the old UFO movies, one of the things that you're going to denote is that when a UFO shows up, what happens? You usually get flashing lights. All of the street lights will flash. Inside door lights will flash, cars will shut off. Has anyone been having car issues with their batteries dying? Because that's also a phenomenon of having a ship show up. When car batteries are dying, you just replace your car, your spark plugs are not working. Has anyone had any issues with their car showing up electronic issues? All these so-called Teslas blowing up, being literally initiated. Like sometimes your phones will glitch out at no reason. Sometimes your Wi-Fi will act funky, okay? Because whenever the ship shows up, it causes electromagnetic fluctuations, and it causes all devices, electronic devices, to act out of sorts. Okay, if you watch old UFO movies, you'll see it, but people are all over the globe talking about what? They're talking about this phenomenon that's showing up with the flashing lights outside of stores, grocery stores, in stores at nighttime, just odd lights just flashing for no reason. Okay, that's a ship, and it's everywhere. Also, some of the phenomenon we're seeing is, we could say that some of this fog, the nano fog with these little nanofibers, could this be a byproduct of the ship causing weird phenomenon or exhaust that has this nanoparticulates in it? Could it be that as well? Because if you get a ship that's so huge, and I also think that the ship was what initiated the scout orbs initially, okay? And I don't think the ship actually came from above. I actually think it came from the water. And if many remember, I think MB33, big up to MB33. Also, who's the other one? There was another YouTuber. Can someone remember the other YouTuber who talked about the big glob that they saw on this the GPS thing? Remember, it was like a big thing under the water, and they didn't know, and it was coming from Antarctica, going through the waterways of Argentina, going way up. Do you remember that? And no one knew what the phenomenon. It was like a big blob, and they thought there would be like, remember they were saying in Brazil there was supposed to be like a big, it was going to be like a big tornado, typhoon, or a big wave would show up because of how big this phenomenon was underneath the water. Do you guys remember that? And no one talks about it. And it happened not once, but twice. I personally think, I can't vet this out because the orbs came from under the water, and we do know that outer space isn't above, it's below the waterways, okay? So when we're talking, and Mr. MB33, big ups to Mr. MB33. I love this YouTuber. He's about that life, gives great details on phenomenon, weather-wise, a phenomenon showing up in the sky, UFOs, drones. He's usually the first to talk about it. But if you remember this big glob they were seeing on this sonar, sonar, was like a sonar reader. I forgot, like it's like some sort of machine. And you were seeing this. I actually think that they were ships coming on in from what we consider to be the Mother Hubbard ship. And I think it wasn't the big one, but I think we could have seen like little ships, like the, like little like light ships that were probably in some sort of like, because some people talked about the cigar shaped UFOs that were coming initially, maybe like 2 months ago. So maybe they were coming in small waves first, but that big glob, they didn't know what it was. It could have been the Mother Hubbard ship coming in, and we couldn't detail it because it was coming underneath the water. Okay. Now that the ship is here, there are beings are now on land, and I personally think it's plausible. I don't know for a fact. I would love to hear your opinion on this. I personally think that all of these fires, some of them, could be notably a byproduct of them burning out areas to fish out or to smoke out certain beings that they know are here. Okay, could it be a byproduct of the ship showing up and causing some exhaust kind of activation, maybe blowing, maybe the ship, I don't know what kind of exhaust system it has. I'm unsure. Maybe it could cause certain gases to ignite. Maybe it could do that as well, because if you think that the fires is random, you would have to be insane. There's no way you can have fires in California, then you have fires over in Canada. Remember, Canada was burning for like a whole year. Brazil was burning. You don't think that's odd that you say, well, maybe the dark cabal is doing, maybe they are. But I would think it's the fact that it's a little more random, North Carolina than in Long Island. Could it be that they're burning out certain areas to find out beings, or that maybe the ship is being so close to the surface, causing weird phenomena, maybe gases are igniting? We don't know. That's something to consider. So adding that, but now we're witnessing beings showing up, y'all. So this is something that I'm excited to talk about. We do have beings on deck. The beings are here, y'all. And I know they are. There's some wonderful things that have been happening. Some of us who are contactees, I will discuss that later in later videos. I don't think I'm privy to discuss it now. Some wonderful things are happening to contactees in relation to the beings that are now on deck. Some of the beings, just to identifying markers now, the dark cabal already knows that sometimes when the beings show up, because our gravitational field is so different from where they come from, they have a hard time moving and looking natural when they're moving in our environment because they're not used to it. So a lot of times how we detail, and I've told you this years ago, they have an impediment when they walk. So a lot of times they'll walk with a limp. They'll walk like they can't really walk. We've had a phenomenon, big up to everyone. I want you to go witness this yourself in videos, people walking backwards. Did anyone see that? People walking backwards. Not being able to differentiate the humanoid looking body, which I think is a shapeshifter body, or maybe they have bodies that they're, they've used, they bioengineered themselves just for coming down on the surface, like kind of like how grays, geoengineered grays have bodies, like almost biological bodies on the outside and just in case with their soul essence. But a lot of beings are walking backwards because they can't differentiate the forward or backwards movement of their bodies that they're in this environment. So a lot of times we're seeing people jogging backwards. Some people say, oh, that's exercise. No, it's just too many type of people doing it. And then we talked about, like, I don't know if you watch Men in Black. We just watched it again the other day when, the Roach Man, he's really creepy. My ex used to do that to creep out my children, but he would, remember he was like all kinds of weirdness, like, like doing weird, like his movements were so off. He was so non-natural in his movement. Like, remember they stopped him? They stopped him and were asking him questions. And when he stepped on roaches, he took it personally. I don't know if you watch Men in Black. If you've not watched it, it's very amusing. Okay, I think it's very amusing to watch Men in Black. Now that you're in this awareness, go watch Men in Black again and see how some of these beings were cloaking themselves in human form. And remember, even when you watch, some of you remember with Arnold Schwarzenegger in what was it? Oh God, what was it called? Arnold Schwarzenegger in, God darn it, that's the one when remember he was like, he did the brain thing and he was like on Mars. He did a whole trip on Mars and they did like a brain thing and he couldn't differentiate reality. Total Recall. Big up to everyone who watched Total Recall. Watch it again and watch the scene when Arnold Schwarzenegger is wearing like a biosuit and it's like it's literally like it's a mechanical body, like a android body on top of his. And remember when he went up to the counter? And for some of you who haven't watched it, I always suggest, if you're on my channel, I will always reference certain things to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Go watch the scene when he's a woman. He's trying to get to the other planet and he's going into the check-in counter and he's a woman and he could only say certain words until the mechanics, I guess he got a cheap suit, and the mechanics was messing up and you started repeating the same thing over and over again, and then the costume glitched out and it opened up and revealed it was him. There are beings here who have biosuits like that here, who are walking around, who are kind of tweaking. So I would suggest that you start doing really good, wear your sunglasses, because I don't want you to make it really obvious, even though when you show up, recognizing these beings, they can pick up your frequency when you recognize them. So just be mindful. But it would be, I think if you want to find out who's here, y'all, they are here on deck. And a good way to do it is to watch your physiological movements that are non-likened to any humanoid you've ever seen. Walking backwards, walking with some sort of impediment. Okay. Being able to wear clothes that are timeline appropriate. So if you see somebody, you know, wearing like 80s gear and really we're in 2025, or wearing things that are off, like wearing certain things on them that is not really matching the look of the person. Okay. Also, I always suggest people also, if you're very sensitive to frequency, if you've watched my videos for many years, about 10 years ago, I told you they emit a different frequency. When they aren't from our dimension, when they're interdimensional, when they're extraterrestrial, whatever you perceivably is something outside of what you're usually accustomed to in this realm, they will emit a frequency that you could feel. Some of you will say, like, if you're around spirits or ghosts or what have you, usually you say you hear, like, you get a chill up your spine, or the hairs on your arms raise up, or like you start getting twitching in your eyes, or like the back of your hairs and the back of your neck start landing up. One thing with me, I get a little bit of a different reaction. Usually I have a tear come out of my eye if it's extraterrestrial, or I get the white ash sound, like a white ash. Usually people have a frequency around them, like aura, an auric feeling. So auras have like colors, warm colors like pink, blue, red, orange, green, combinations of that. And people, you can feel them, whether it's dark or light, it doesn't matter. We're used to that. But when you have these beings come in close proximity of you, you will notice at least with me, I notice an ash, like a white noise that happens with them. Kind of like remember back in the days when we used to watch television, and we used to watch television when TVs used to go off at night. Some of you are a certain age. Big up to our family of a certain age. I don't know if this is only Gen Zs, because I'm not Gen Z. I'm from Gen X. So I know I got the tail end of that, but I know with boomers and my mom, because my mom's not a boomer. She's before that. I forgot what they call them. The no name. Yeah, I forgot what they call the ones before the boomers. But she's from that generation. So they used to have TVs that go off. They would play the Star Spangled Banner at 12 midnight, and then the TV would go off and you get this white ash. If you ever watched the Poltergeist, you remember it's like a white ash. It looks like white ash on the television. It's kind of like that. So if you're in contact with these beings or in close proximity, you may get that ash. I get that, and I get a tear. So I usually know I get certain other feelings, but definitely that. And also because they're not used to us, and they've only perceived us from a kind of abstract kind of form, their behavior patterns won't be normal. So I don't think we're going to see them in regular places all the time, but because YouTube is a magical place of variety, and many of us come from different places, we got boobs and balls on ground everywhere, I would say that we are the best details of first responders when we denote these beings, and you will get an idea of seeing that we already had our zombies, already had beings show up in front of their places that are not normal. And also the animals will react different to them. Okay. So sometimes, if you have dogs that are normally very spiky, very barky, and all of a sudden a being walks by and they get quiet, and that's not their normal behavior, that's also detailing that this being may not be a byproduct of our holographic system that we're usually engaging in. If your cats are normally very, non-reactive to humans, and then all of a sudden they're like, shh, like very hostile and more aggressive, it could be the being is not denotably from where we come. If you notice that any new species that will be added to our environment, that the animals react more overtly and more responsive because they know they have a very strong connection to, nature, or, and they know what they're used to. So if you see birds and something comes and all of your insects and birds and your frogs stop, like if you're from the South and you're in like New Orleans, Mississippi, Alabama, or Florida, where you're used to hearing the frogs and you're hearing the bugs and the cicadas singing all the time, and then all of a sudden everything's quiet. Now, mind you, when a gator comes around, I've known this from living in Florida for such a long time, gators will make things quiet. If gators lurk around, sometimes you will hear frogs and everything stop, but I'm talking about when you notably hear every night sounds and all of a sudden everything is quiet. That's also a sign and signal that something outside of the ordinary, something outside of the physical, natural, biological, normal world is present. So I want everybody to pay attention to their animals. They're here. We are now, the ETA is now, they have arrived. They are here. And your Willy Wonka systems are doing everything possible. Now, what I will say is this also, with the false flags that they are going to present to you, I've always talked about the fact that Willy Wonka and his League of Doom have a good cachet of false flags waiting in the mist to resolve your perception of what is here that they can't explain and they don't want to explain to you. So just understand and understand that we do have a pre-planned Plandemic on deck. Okay. We also have, anytime you see weird they want to distract you with celebrity news, anytime they tell you to look this way for celebrity stuff, I want you to look this way or up or down. Try to stop perceiving from what social media is presenting to you, because they are the biggest cap. They will present something major to distract certain communities. So when they bring up a brown celebrity where something happens to them, they are trying to captivate that community and trying to distract them. It could be some beings are showing up in their neck of the woods and they want them to be totally distracted so they're not paying attention to other things. If they're showing lunar kind of information showing up, that means in those neighborhoods, specific neighborhoods, they are trying to divert your attention from something that is present to you. So make sure you understand and understand all of social media is being directed, projected, and socially engineered on your behalf to distract you, to make you move in certain ways, and to make you react in certain ways. There's nothing on social media that you should take seriously, because everything on this, other than independent people that you know and vetted out. Now, mind you, we got a whole bunch of people that are geoengineered just for this time frame. What do I mean by that? When we talk about social media, and I'm an OG. I've been on social media since 2000, and I've been on the radio from before 2011, but I was on YouTube since 2011. I'm one of the oldest, one of the OGs that's on site. Okay, so I'm one of the original OGs that's on site. So I've seen it, I've been there, and I'm also the most directed, most attacked by, our beautiful YouTube. They've made it a point to subjugate my channel to, to a lot of censorship, constantly taking my videos off, diverting people's attention from my channel to push it over to another channel that is more in alignment with their social engineering. So be careful, because there are channels that are set up specifically for these times to divert you, to dilute the information, and to lead you on a different rabbit excursion, because they don't want you going to channels that have a certain amount of authenticity. Now, I'm not the most authentic, but what I would say is that I'm not control. I have zero control. There isn't any governmental fixture that's controlling me, even though you've heard people occasionally say, oh, she's CIA, FBI. Absolutely negative, zero connection to anything. There isn't anybody controlling my channel. There isn't any man over me. There isn't anybody. They will send people to you to try to divert you and to try to get into your alignments, that they can try to demonize you or try to lead people to other directions so that they don't get more legitimate people that haven't any ties or controlled. I'm zero controlled opposition, but there are many channels that are Because remember, no one talked about aliens, nobody, and all of a sudden, everybody's big into talking about reptilians and aliens. Some of us who've been on a long time, we know that the only reason they're talking about it now is because it is socially acceptable and it's part of the algorithm now. Because remember, they got to control the algorithm, they got to control the information, so they will set out all these others to dilute the actual information so that you never can grasp anything tangible. So be careful of that. Pay attention to how things feel to you. And I always tell you, in a way that you can authenticate things, you don't listen to anyone. I tell you, don't listen to me. You always have to vet things out for yourself and always see where someone's coming from. If someone is coming from corporate America and they've been taking pictures of themselves for like 3 years and maybe they need to go on a maternity leave, and then all of a sudden they doing light language and talking, you know, like they're magical online, maybe they aren't real. Maybe they are now coming into this as a way to, you know, as a gig to support themselves. And maybe they were cultivated by a whole hostile channel who cultivates sea stars and then spits them out. So, you know, as to control your perception of new ideology so that they can control how you see and perceive things. So just pay attention to that. I'm not saying names, but there's a certain channel where they are known to procure certain sea stars. And they like to do that and create them and then spit them out because I already called them out. And then, you know, you think they're legitimate because they're speaking light language and everything, but you can learn that on YouTube 101. Okay. How do you legitimize someone? Look at their past. What were they doing previously? Were they always part of the UFO community? Were they always talking about reptilians? Were they always against the grain? If they were something that was very systematically matrix-like, and all of a sudden they popping into your thing, you know, if you look at their videos and all they do is a lot of graphics, you looking at their look, they look, because UFO people were a little strange. People who talk about reptilian stuff, we're not really, we don't follow the algorithm of physical look to everybody else. We tend to be a little obscure because we think outside the box. So I put that out there because there's people out here that are purposefully set up. And it may not be that they are agents themselves, but by default, they may push a certain narrative that is very in alignment with what the dark Kabbalists want to be propelled out there so that they can present to you something. So it deters you from seeing the truth and you see a kind of truth, but from a controlled opposition point of view. So pay attention to the ruffians out here that are placating themselves as so-called, you know, UFO and, you know, readers and, you know, because if they were readers, I talked about this with the zombies and it's no shade, but if you are a reader and you could go back, if these people are legitimate readers, they would have told you about the Plandemic and the that was going to make people pop, 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 pop. And if they didn't say that in 2020 or 2021, and they were telling you to take the and they weren't telling you not to do it, those people are not who they say they are. Because if you were about that life, you would have been able to project, to predict, and also say what was coming. If you couldn't do that then, what makes you think they're doing it now? If they didn't tell you not to take the and they didn't tell you what was coming, they're all controlled opposition. And they're full of it. Okay. You know, a lot of them took the and I, you know, I'm saying if you so enlightened and you so wonderful, but you telling everybody to participate in bioweapons, and all you have to do to legitimize people is go back to their channel in 2020, y'all. Go back. Go back in time. You can see the truth. Don't come to me and say, oh, this person, can you tell me this person? You don't have to come to me. Go and see where they were in 2020. Go look at their channel in 2019. What predictive programming were they projecting? What were they doing then? If they weren't on this, and all of a sudden in 2021, they're resurrected into something new, or now they're doing light language and they're channeling. But they were working for corporate America. You got to ask yourself, is that legitimate? Or is this a byproduct of them recreating themselves and being in a new genre that is now being perpetuated? Okay. That's a form of control opposition. All right. I just put that out there. You don't have to ask me, because people ask me, oh, is this person legitimate? You don't have to ask me anymore. Do your own hedge work. Because I don't want to be I don't want to be the bad messenger, be like, oh, FleurBrun, she's just hostile. I don't have to tell you. Go and look. Okay, so if you want to get a reader and the person in 2020 was not telling you what was going to happen now, I would suggest that should be a non-negotiable. They should have known, okay, if they're a reader. If they're so-called channeling light beings, they should have been channeling light beings before 2020, okay? If all of a sudden they channeling out of the blue, you got to see, and also you got to see who's cultivated them, what sector did they come from, who are they in alignment with? Tells you a lot, okay? You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so anybody else? Okay, so I'm not gonna keep you for long. I've got to go on to Zoom tonight. Big up to everybody who's joining me on Zoom. You can join us tonight on Zoom. We're gonna be on at, I think, your time. Well, I can never know the time. It's gonna be at, I don't know what time it's gonna be. It's gonna be sometime tonight because it's in different time zones. So you'll figure it out if it comes to Zoom. It'll probably be anywhere from 7 to 9. I think 7 Central or 9 Eastern, somewhere around that tonight for those who are in the United States. So we're going to join tonight. They said shots fired by who? Do your investigation. You'll see what the target was. Okay, or targets. I don't have the target. I give you information so you can do the due diligence yourself. It's better for you to find out than for me to tell you. You'll feel the information is more authentic and you won't feel like it's being projected by somebody who's hating on them. How about that? Okay. So I'll be on tonight. Thank you, Oracle, for putting it on. We'll be on tonight at 7 to 9 Central and Eastern. I guess we'll talk about what's going on with the eclipse. I want to talk to everybody tonight is the eclipse. So we're going to be on talking about the eclipse, the effects of the eclipse, how it's affecting your body, which it probably is affecting many of you now. Not only the eclipse, the full moon, right? It's a blood moon, correct? It's a blood moon. So it could be having a physiological effect on your psyche, on your mood, on personal things going on. Also, it's a purge year. It's a 9, an end year. So a lot of things are ending. You're ending contracts. You're ending things that aren't servicing you. You're also, taking your finals and certain spiritual lessons that are necessary for you to become aware of where you need to be post pole shift. Personally, like I said, because of the gentleman who just transitioned, I forgot his name. If Susu's on here, she'll mention his name. I actually posted his video a lot of times. He was the one who talked about, and Nancy Leger. Nancy Leger never said about 2025, but this was the gentleman who actually went on Nancy Leger's from Zeta Talk, if any of you know Zeta Talk, who talked about the connection to the date-wise around where the pole shift's happening. Now, one thing I said with the gentleman who kind of took her information and went further and did his own informative information based on all of the fault lines changing, the environmental changes, the pole shifting, moving the magnetic north is so far. He was the one who really talked about 2025 being the year of the pole shift. I really didn't solidify that as being the date, the year, but because of the thing the dark Kabbalists have done and the way they've been desperate and pushing without thinking, sometimes they're really being messy. And that doesn't sound like a very patient people that have years. I know Jason Preshears does talk about the pole shift. He calls it the Phoenix event. He says it's going to happen in 2045. What does he say? 20? Who's here? Who's a party to Jason Preshears? I think he says 2045. I think the reason why he hasn't ever been attacked by YouTube is because he's giving that date. I think a lot of his information is great, but I also think that date is why they allow him to just go rogue and talk about the Phoenix event. So people think they have more time and they're not prepared for something happening this year. So I think that's why Jason Preshear, I don't think it's that his information is wrong. I think that part of the information is off. And why they allow him. Because I looked at his channel and he kind of elevated quickly and he hasn't had any sort of attack from YouTube. Whenever people don't get attacked by YouTube and they're allowed to be pushed and their subscribers go up and they talk about supposedly the same thing, it's because they're pushing a narrative that is definitely in alignment Oh, thank you, my love. Thank you, Yvette. How do you join Zoom? You just Patreon, I do the Zoom. People come to my Patreon. So Patreon, from there, people can join Zoom from Sundays, which our Zooms are like sometimes 72 hours. Most of them are. Sundays, and Thursdays. What basically is the whole week. So it's really like the forever jammy party of people like breaking down. We talk about everything. The spider beings. I mean, imagine moms and abuelas talking all night about space creatures and everything under the sun, parasites, everything is it's kind of like that. So, Patreon, usually through Patreon, you join. Sometimes I'll do the Zoom on YouTube, which is nice because I'll just have you, I'll beam you up from YouTube and then you'll come in and we'll do like an all-nighter. So big up to everyone joining the last time I did that. It's kind of fun when I'm on here on YouTube. But but anyway, what I was talking about is like the whole thing with the pole shift. I personally think that there's a lot of people who don't talk about the pole shift. And just for those who say that the pole shift doesn't matter, it doesn't matter who projects the pole shift, because people ask me if it's natural, if it's not. I actually think it's part of the simulation. It happens every single time right after reset. I think it's a byproduct of this simulated system. It doesn't matter who creates it, it happens. And to say that people should not pay attention to it or not react to it, you have a lot of control over how you interface, but also when you get certain information and you don't move and to react to it, that because sometimes you'll get clues to something and it tells, so it's basically to tell you that something is coming. Like, let's say to somebody, like if I say to you, based on my information, I say, well, hey, I know it's going to rain this week. I know it's going to rain based on, all these years, usually this part of April, or what does it say? April showers brings May flowers. Just based on the environment over the years, there's been a heightened amount of rain during this time of year. And I know probably this week we're going to have a lot of rain. So I suggest to you, hey, maybe you should wear your raincoat, put it in the car, or bring a rain hat, or bring an umbrella. Now, someone would say to you, oh, why are you fear baiting them? Oh, why are you projecting them? They can just geoengineer a different. Okay. So if something is part of a system, a part of the program, and you suggest something that would make them more prepared for it, does that make me fear baiting you, or is it me giving you a warning so that if it does happen, because it's most likely going to happen, because during the last couple of years, during April, it usually rains. Why wouldn't you take that as a warning and say, hey, it could rain. Let me just bring a rain jacket. FleurBrun is, maybe she was working in weather, or maybe she just knows based on, the system, and she watches all these things geographically. Maybe she just knows. And then next thing you know, it rains on maybe not Monday, Tuesday, maybe it rains on Wednesday. Maybe it rains on Wednesday and Thursday. Would that be me fear baiting you, or would that be me giving you forewarning? Be careful of people telling you that someone giving you a heads up is fear baiting you, because that is also part of people making you sit sedentary. It's this whole thing with like Jesus. It's like, Jesus got me. But if you listen to really biblical statements before, it's like, God supports those who support themselves, right? So someone would say, well, Jesus got me, but you sitting there idly doing nothing in alignment, what you perceive Jesus is supposed to do for you, you usually miss the boat. But those who take the bigger concept of God helps those who help themselves, by you being proactive in whatever you're supposed to move towards, will help to bring in that energy. So when I'm bringing up the pole shift, it doesn't matter who creates the pole shift. It doesn't matter if it's part of the system. It is notably something historically that's always referenced. So when I tell you that there are people here that have known about the pole shift, the Germans knew about it, the Russians knew it, the Khazars know about it. Why do I know this? Because all of them made sure that they moved all of their bases in the middle of Antarctica, or out in the Falkland Islands, and out in South America. These are the same people who were byproducts of the last World War II, which I personally think was the last pole shift. How would they know that? Because they know that to be safe, you got to live between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. Why would that matter? Is because it's in the meridians. That means it's less like when there's a shift on the planet, even if the planet is holographic, it's all a program, it's all simulated, but it's still a byproduct of the program, that those are the safer meridians. They're all doing it. So the people in the know who have interface with the aliens, who are controlling the system, they've all made it a point to move somewhere where there's more of a balance. And if you notice, everyone else is having weather wars. Their skies are not the same way they used to be 20 years ago. Their air is not the same. Their water, their coolness, hotness is changed. How come that's happening? So please be careful of listening to people that are telling you not to listen to people that are telling you to get a raincoat and a rain jacket. You don't have to do it, but I remember I'm not being paid by Willy Wonka. I'm not under a handler. I've been on a long time on YouTube before it was comfortable to talk about UFOs when I was a melanated woman. So remember, I'm outside of the square. If you want to listen to people who who just came on this algorithm because it was popular, not because they were into it really, but because it was an opening into a genre that they can now talk about because they study it in a book or they listen to other channels and they can, or they've been propagated or, you know, created by another channel holder, creating these personalities so they can project it to you. You don't have to listen to me, but you're going to wish you did, because everything I've told you thus far from 2011 on, I've been spot on. You can go back into my archives and see what I've represented and what I've talked about. You don't have to listen to everybody else. You could just go back and see if I'm just discussing things that are popular now, or was I discussing these things previous to when it wasn't something that was notably important or popular. Okay, that's all. Look at people's history and you can tell who they are. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Be careful of following the algorithm because it could lead you off a cliff. All right, y'all, I'm out of here. I got to make dinner for my family. Okay, so I could be on here in Zoom all night. Okay, and we're going to talk about tonight on Zoom. We're going to talk about the amazing, the amazing eclipse and the effects of it. Okay, so thank you for everyone for joining. Thank you for everyone who gave me donations. I appreciate it. I really appreciate the donations. I appreciate you coming here. Appreciate you listening to my rants sometimes, even if it's not relative to you. And also feel free to add your own comments, and because I really appreciate it, because I don't know everything. So it's always great to get another opinion or things that you know that you value, and also that you've researched yourself. Okay. So wish you all well. Have a peaceful and calm full moon eclipse, y'all, tonight. Okay. I'll see you tonight on Zoom. Peace. If I can actually end it. I can never, you know, sometimes I'm here, I never know how to end my Zoom, my live streams.